Starting.
Is that far enough?
All right. Hello, how is everyone doing today? It is digital host AJ Wuest here with 48 First Alert Chief Meteorologist, the man, the myth, the legend, the Brad Travis. Brad, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm great, AJ. We had that thunderstorm that was in and out of here. It's a little chilly, though, a little cool, but we knew this was coming.
Absolutely, and you are out at the Ace Hardware out in Jones Valley. Last week you were in Guntersville. You programmed quite a bit of weather radios last week. How's it looking today?
It's been a steady flow of traffic coming in here. In fact, we started this at 8, but they were lined up at 7:30 this morning. That's usually the case. You get the early arrivals. I don't know, some of you say, I want to try to avoid the rush. And we've had a steady flow of traffic come through. They've sold about close to 70 weather radios here. They've got them for sale just under $40, so right at $39.99. And now's probably a pretty good time to come out here, getting a break from the heavier traffic we had earlier.
And of course, last week you were out in Guntersville. What are some common questions from both of these two weather event radio days that you've been getting from people?
Well, there's a lot of common threads, and people that bring in their weather radios, if they're not buying a new one, again, you can bring in a used weather radio or radio you buy from somewhere else, and we'll program it. We're not here to sell weather radios. We're here to make sure your weather radio you have is programmed and make sure you actually have one. The number one question is people that want to make sure they just get warned for specific warnings. Some people are a little different. Some people say, I only want to wake up in the middle of the night for a tornado warning. I only want this thing to wake me up for that. Or they don't live in a flood area. They say, I don't need to be warned of flooding. Mm-hmm. And the thing about weather radio, when they first started doing these things, when we came out, and God, this has been about 15 years, the original weather radio that came out would alert you for everything. And they only had like 3 channels. If you had one from the 80s or even the early 90s, we've had a few of those show up. The problem is that goes off for every warning in every county. The National Weather Service sends a warning out on that transmitter. So they advanced the technology in the late 90s, early 2000s to where you could say, I only want it to go off for this specific county. However, that was still an issue because it was going off a lot, because it was going off for every warning they issued for that county. Then you had people wanting to put multiple counties. Let's say, for example, you live in the city of Huntsville. Mm-hmm. You'd say, okay, I want Limestone County on there because the storms are coming in from the west, so I want to make sure I have plenty of warning. But the challenge with that now is the way the National Weather Service issues the warnings. They issue what's called a polygon. So they don't necessarily just issue it for one specific county. Let's say a storm's coming in, it's got a tornado, it's coming in from Limestone County. The warning will likely include Limestone and Madison County. So the whole point is to even narrow the focus down even more. So with the new weather radios, these came out about 3 years ago. It's the Midland 120EZ. So if you read on the back of the panel, it should say that. Then you're able to go in and say, I only want a tornado warning, or I only want a severe thunderstorm warning and a tornado warning. And the whole point is to get this thing to go off as little as possible, because at 3 o'clock in the morning when that weather radio goes off, you're in a panic as it is. You don't know what's going on around you. Sometimes it can be the case. And if it's just a flash flood warning, you're going to turn that radio off, and then the next warning that comes could be a tornado warning, and you're going to miss it.
Right, and you mentioned all the different types of weather radios that you can get, the Midland being the newest one. Would you happen to remember your first ever weather radio that you got?
I don't work here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was that one back in the 80s, and we've got one in the trash can over here that we threw away earlier. A lot of those, the thing about when you're dealing with electronics, the challenge is you're going to get corroded batteries, and sometimes the chemical reaction can kill the radio. So if you've got a weather radio at home, you can't make it out here today, just make sure the batteries, if they don't work, take them out of your radio. Otherwise, the electrodes, it's going to kill that radio. But yeah, that was pretty much my first one. And again, I was a kid. I was always the one that was responsible for the weather of the house. I was always like the severe weather liaison, so to speak. We had a basement, so I'd like, oh, we're going to get a tornado watch today. And I would make sure all the blankets were in the certain area. And of course, I listened to a lot of radio. I'm from Kansas, so back in Kansas, there was a lot more radio stations with storm chasers or storm spotters, and they had like mobile unit 27 and mobile unit 10 or whatever. But it was just a bunch of the people that work for the radio station out on the road giving you that information. So I think that's where I kind of got that passion. Plus, I had a scanner. I would always listen to the scanner, the storm reports from the EMA. There used to be a lot more of that. Now we're so digital and reliant on our cell phones. It's just a completely different ballgame.
Right. That is so cool. Even from a young age, you were doing what you're doing now, telling people the forecast and the weather. But this is currently your second stop in your Ace Hardware weather programming tour, weather radio programming tour. Why are putting events on such as this one so important for the Huntsville community?
Well, I think it's really important, AJ, to make sure you go out and you buy this equipment, you think you're going to be safe, and there's a false sense of security if it's not set up properly. The new radios, it's a lot easier to program them than the older ones, but you can still misstep. There's some specific things you need to know: the frequency, where that tower's coming from. If you have the radio on the wrong frequency, you're not going to get the alert. There's the county codes that you need to put in. But again, it's a lot easier process, and you can find that information on our website at WAFF.com. There's a tutorial there. You can just search for that, and you'll be able to program it at home. The older ones, the whole reason we started doing this is because the older ones were a lot more difficult to program.
Now, take me through the process of programming a weather radio. Like, someone comes in with their weather radio. What do you do once that happens?
Well, at some locations they'll have batteries. They give complimentary batteries. It takes 3 AA batteries. We'll take it out of the box, put the batteries in, and then we just start from the setup menu and set the time is the first thing. The key is we go in and we set the radio, make sure it's on the right frequency, and then we go in another step and take out the warnings they don't want to be alerted to. Now, if you go in there, and if you're going to do this on your own, you basically, if you only want tornado warnings, you just take it default off. You take all of them out because the tornado warning is the one warning that you can't take out. So there's no option to turn it off. So that's the only one, and that's, again, the key there. We'll go through there. We'll make sure it's set up, the volume and the alert, the voice alert or siren alert, something like that, and just make sure it works.
And I want to get to, so you've been in the Huntsville community for quite some time now. What are some instances you can think of dealing with, or just instances of severe weather here in the Huntsville community that you can look back on and remember?
There's so many to remember. The most notable, of course, is going to be the days we have the bigger outbreaks of tornadoes. But I think, the obvious is going to be April 27th, and I think that's what everybody thinks about. But there's also, we had the Super Tuesday outbreak. The severe weather at night is probably the most memorable because it's the one where people are most vulnerable as the storms are coming in. And the more electricity, the more lightning you have with these storms at night, and you have a tornado warning, the more likely there's going to be a tornado there, because there's just that increase in energy and updraft ability with these storms that produce all this lightning. April 27th keeps coming back because that's the tornado outbreak that affected not only me and everybody in the community, but everybody at work. It was everybody that was working, their mind was elsewhere because that big tornado that moved into Anderson Hills, that was EF4 at that time, but it was the EF5 for several miles as it moved in, and that ended up being a mile north of my house. So that I actually left the air to call my family to tell them they need to seek shelter. And the one thing I really take away is I had a neighbor, and I was texting him. I imagine it was on a pager at that time, but he said to me, I mean, as I saw this tornado on the camera, on our Alpha camera over there at the time at the radar site in Limestone County, I was awestruck because in my mind, I was picturing this wedge-type tornado that you could clearly see, but it wasn't that way. Hey, you know what? I got an old guy. Hey, Dan Schmidt's here. Somebody you may remember. Hey, Dan, come here. You guys may remember Dan Schmidt. Good seeing you, Dan.
Good to see you.
Dan and I worked
Dan
together back
Schmidt.
in the late 90s,
Yeah,
and we're doing
early
a
2000s.
segment here on our digital format.
Okay.
What have you been up to today?
We
These
are
days, I
we're
should
buying
say.
a little bit of fertilizer here for the lawn from Ace Hardware, of course. Of course, I've got a weather radio already programmed. You know, I did it myself.
Yeah.
I'm that talented.
He is a
But-
talented meteorologist. So are you still out of the Arsenal, or are you retired yet?
No. I got a couple more years. I'll be retired, but I'm out at the Arsenal doing weather for the test areas out there.
Oh, cool.
So we maintain a weather network, and we give forecasts out during the day. And then lightning, of course. All the people out and about working outside need some lightning warnings and alerts.
Awesome. Sorry to put you on the spot, but
Yeah,
I'm glad
yeah.
you stopped by.
Good to see you again.
All right,
Brad.
I'll catch up with you a little later.
Yes, sir.
All right.
There we go.
So,
we
yeah,
got
that
a
was
live
Dan.
interview
Dan,
there.
In fact,
Yeah.
when I first came back here, 28 years ago, when Dan and I started working together, and Jay Prater was the chief at the time. So, again, that was another memorable severe weather event because Jay Prater was at a weather conference, and I had been here probably 3 months. And Dan was working Jay's shift, and I was working Dan's shift. And we had severe weather that started breaking out. And so I'm watching the radar, and it was a storm developing near Russellville. And all of a sudden it starts producing lightning, and I'm like, man, they're going to issue a tornado warning here pretty soon. So I jump on the air. I'm on the air for maybe 3 minutes with the tornado warning, giving people advice, and I get off the air. I'd never done any long-form continuous coverage ever. So the story is the news director comes running into the weather office and says, what are you doing? And I go, I'm doing my job. I just broke into programming. I told everybody what was going on. He goes, you need to get back on the air. And like 4 hours later, I was like, man, what did I get into? And this was after mispronouncing names. I think I said Hartzell instead of Hartzell.
That's
But
a tough one.
Those are some
Yeah.
of the other stories people don't always remember. People new to the area, it takes a while to catch up. But, yeah, I've been here a while. But, yeah, a lot of storms. I think that the thing about the storms is the ones at night. That's why you need a weather radio. I get so many people that say, is it safe for me to go to bed? And I'm like, I can't say that because everyone's situation is different. So say you live in a mobile home, you got a big tree outside your mobile home. Chances are that tree's going to fall on that mobile home if you get high winds. So again, personal responsibility goes a long way, but it's my job to make sure everyone gets the message, and the more ways you can get the message, the better.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Well, Brad, thank you so much for joining with me today and talking about this awesome event. There's 2 more Ace Hardware events in the near future. And so if you need your weather radio programmed or you need to
Those
get
will be in
one,
May.
come on out to the Ace Hardware. Stay up to date with our website and we'll keep you covered. But thank you once again, Brad.
Hey,
And,
AJ, before we go, there's a bit of a delay. You got a quick second?
yes.
I will say the most distracting thing about having these at Ace Hardware locations is I'm surrounded by all these spices and all this barbecue stuff.
Oh, yes.
That's what I want to be out doing right now, doing some grilling. But, yeah, always a good time at Ace Hardware.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today, Brad. You have a great rest of your day, and come on out to the Ace Hardware in Jones Valley and give Brad a visit. He's there until 2. But
Sounds good. See you later, AJ.
all right, have a good one, Brad.